Hey YouTube, it's me again. I am Jamie Jones, the founder and executive director of Asha's Refuge, and I am trying to share with you more about the truths about immigration. And hopefully today on our part 3 we can uncover some more things that you might not have known. Okay, how did I start Asha's Refuge and how did I get involved and have such a passion for refugees? People ask me that all the time, and I have to share with them a story about Asha. So if you've heard this story, I'm glad you're willing to listen to it yet again. I'm going to be very careful as I share stories because I don't like to use names all of the time. So maybe sometimes I should change the names because I want to be very careful to people that are new here who might not necessarily want all of their story shared. But I will say that Asha is so sweet and she has allowed me to share her story and even be a name of one of the people that inspired us to start the organization. So in 2000 and maybe 8, something like that, I started volunteering at the Resettlement Agency, and that was Catholic Charities at the time. I was helping a English teacher teach English. I was just a volunteer and would help her on some days, along with many other people that would try to help teach the English classes with her. And I recognized that there were so many things going on in the classroom where the students had trouble learning and really paying attention because of other situations and issues that they had. I connected to some of the caseworkers and things, and there was just so many skills that they needed for the clients, so much help, so much transportation help, social services and everything for the newcomers, that it was just so much, so that a lot of the questions from the clients would be asked to the English teacher because the students seemed to really connect to their teacher, and they would ask her questions about their mail. They would ask her questions about their health, about trying to get medical care, and it was just overwhelming the classes sometimes where she really wasn't able to focus completely on English because she had such a heart to try to resolve and help them connect to the help that they needed. So I recognized that there was a gap in the system where newcomers would come and they would still need so much help that they really couldn't focus on the language. It's kind of like some of the Memphis city schools that I see sometimes, and I love the city school teachers. Most of them are so amazing. They have such a heart and compassion for their students. I've seen though that sometimes these teachers work really hard to manage teaching in the classroom and doing all the other paperwork that the state requires them to do, that sometimes may be unnecessary. But at any rate, the children have gone through so much sometimes, and we don't know what's going on at home. This could happen anywhere, but the teachers are having to deal with some of the social issues in classroom before the child could even learn. Like if a child comes hungry, they can't really easily take a test and remember things well, and so they have to deal with the hunger issue, or clothing the child well and things like that, or maybe there's something going on at home that the school needs to be involved in to try to help the family come together. Sometimes even with adults, you know, that happened in these English classes where the adults were coming into a new country and they had so many social services type needs that they really couldn't focus on just the language. So that's where I saw the gap, especially for Asha. Now, I started probably working and learning about the resettlement agency here and didn't really even understand who a refugee was or anything like that. And in the midst of even starting that volunteering job, I went on a mission trip to Indonesia. This was a long trip, long flight, I think 37 hours. I mean, it was all over the place. It felt like Japan, China, just trying to get there. Can't even remember, it's been a while. But we were going to some islands in Indonesia. I can't share a lot about that trip, that's top secret, okay? But I did learn a lot about what it meant to be living in poverty on the ground and even in a Muslim territory. Well, you know, we in America have been so fearful after the 9/11 attacks that something is going to happen again to us. And there's been so much fear after that, and it's so sad to me because I can remember my mom flying a lot in and out of town and just meeting her at the airport. And when you flew, you always get the little flight wings, and you could go, you know, there was just not as much security, which maybe there should be, but at the same time now it's just like it's so sad what has happened because of the fear and because of terror. I'm not saying that it shouldn't happen. I mean, it shouldn't really. I'm sad that it's gotten to that point, but it's just so different traveling now, and it wasn't like that, and so we've all gotten all this fear because of that, and what the news and the media is sharing with us about different people groups. And there are really things happening that we should really be warned about, that we should really take caution with. But I think that when we try to single out any kind of people group to say, hey, this whole group is bad, we must be careful, because I met so many people from the Muslim background that were so nice to me, that were so helpful to me, that were so against terror, that were running from the same terror that we're running from, that were confused by it, that were embarrassed by it, that would represent their people group, which it shouldn't. Just like one person in a group that responds and acts very bad shouldn't necessarily make that mean that the entire group is terrible. I'm not saying that I agree with some of the Muslim beliefs and traditions, because I don't. But I also have met so many people from the Muslim families and Muslim worlds that you can meet two different Muslims and two have totally different opposite ideas on the Quran, their holy book. They have a completely different outlook on it. You can meet two different Christians and have two different sides of what they're feeling like God is telling them to do. So I'm not going to say I'm for or against. I'm just saying I think there's more to the story here, and I don't think that we need to just be fearful of each other, but we need to come together and talk about this and communicate, because yes, there are bad groups of people, yes, and I think as a whole there are some religions and some things that really are out to hurt people, and they're not, they're of the dark world, and I think that's true. I mean, it is true. So I'm just saying that I don't want to be afraid of it, because if I have Jesus Christ in me, then nothing can touch me, right? Nothing can hurt me. And if it does, if it does on this earth in my body, then I wake up and I'm with Jesus. So what do I have to be afraid of? People say you can't go into that place because they might hurt you. Well, they might, and you don't want to just be stupid, but if the Lord tells you to go somewhere, I have to believe that He's going to protect you. And if he knows your last day, I think that your days are numbered before we're ever born. So I don't think you can make it any faster or shorter. I mean, of course, if you just lay down in front of a truck, you can't test God. I mean, you can try, but and you may be run over by a truck. But I think within reason, when you're going out there with a heart after helping and loving people, then God's going to protect us, and He's going to show us things, and He's going to introduce people that are from different cultures and stuff that just aren't like us, that may scare us, that they may smell different, they may eat different things, they may act different, they may dance a little more than we do. By the way, the African people, the Congo people, and Rwanda people, I love their freedom in some sense. They have a freedom about them that is so contagious. They're so welcoming. They start to dance, and their little music and their little bongo drums and things like that, all of a sudden you just feel like dancing, and they're just dancing, and they don't care what they look like. They're so acceptive. At least this is my experience. And then all of a sudden you're dancing, and you would never dance in front of, another big white group of people, because you're afraid of what you look like, because that's what we do in America. We're afraid that we look silly, that we're funny, that we look immature, that we don't look our age, that somebody's laughing at us, that we're too fat to do that. Not me anyway, that's what I do. So we're so insecure. But anyway, hanging out with other cultures really gives you a lot of freedom to be yourself, and I think that it's really cool. So back to Indonesia, I was in Indonesia, and I really experienced an accepting group of people, families that were really struggling and very sad about what 9/11 brought. And a lot of people are forgetting about what it's not about forgetting it, but a lot of people are forgetting. The young next generation, go and ask kids that were born in 2000, 2010, 2005, and stuff like that. Ask them Yeah, in 2010. Gosh, that's 9 years ago. I was thinking that was like yesterday. I'm getting old. But ask them what they think about 9/11. You'd be surprised how many don't even know a lot about it at all. And that's sad to me. But I do also think that the media, and I'm not just harping on the media, but perhaps, you know, we were replayed these buildings falling and stuff, and it was terrifying, and it stopped America, and it was something that I'll never ever forget. Where I was and everything, I was in our living room watching the babies, and I saw this over and over, and I was just traumatized and depressed and shocked, and just over and over I'd watch it, and the falling people, and it still haunts me. And I think that it drew fear over America, like a spiritual fear, and it's sad. But you know, we have to be careful. We have to be protective, but we can't just not go. We can't not love people. We can't get a cold heart and an unforgiving heart, because there has always been somebody in every people group, Christian included, that have been really ugly to another group. And I think that if we really dived into history and looked at that, we're going to see that. And what I feel like that each of us need to be careful to do is to face one another, to not just go see, look, go attack. It's more like go see, sit down and have coffee with, tea with, pray for, connect to. Why did you do that? Why do you feel that way? What were you told? What were you taught? What was your actual experience? You know, how do you feel? How did your parents grow up? What were you missing? What do you wish you had? You know, what's your connection with Christ? Do you believe in God? Do you believe there's a creator? What happens after you die? You know, and these questions aren't things that you can all say that, you know, any one person has all of the answers. I think that I do believe the Bible, and I believe all of the answers are in the Bible. But are we each full of enough wisdom in the Holy Spirit to say that we have it all and we understand it all? I don't think so, because we're daily learning. And when we stop learning, that's scary. If we stop and think that we know it all, well, then are we God? I don't think that we're ever going to arrive to that. We're always learning. So I always get on these little tangents, and I apologize for that, but I don't. Yeah, so I got really close to families in Indonesia, and learned that so many of them were just like families of my own. They weren't really paying attention a lot to the news. They were going to school, trying to get a school, most of them. You know, these little village schools are hoping to have one. If you had the money, could go. But the particular village that I was in, they didn't have a school. But you could go through the cities, and they'd all have their little school. But it was very different from American schools, you know. By the way, a lot of people in these villages in Africa or Indonesia and stuff, they could sit literally in the dirt with two children holding a chalkboard on a board that they created. So they're standing up there taking turns holding the board for the teacher with some old chalk, and then their chair is not a chair at all, sitting on the ground with a little piece of paper in their hand. So they don't have a lot of books, they don't have computers and technology, and they're learning math, and they're learning about the created world and the order of really God's creation, you know, science and things that they see in their world, agriculture. I mean, they're learning things, and the kids are really growing from that. And they don't have everything that we have in America, but they're still learning. They're learning a lot. And so I look at America, we have to have every little thing in our backpack, and every little actual tool and every specific thing, or else we can't learn. Or for a teacher, we have to have this exact thing, or we can't even teach. We get like off track from like taking the time just with natural things that God's given us to teach from, and we suddenly can teach. We can't even teach at all, and we're in a frantic, you know, uproar because we don't have this particular book that we felt like is the only thing we can teach from. I don't know. I think that that's exciting, and we can do that. I'm not really a teacher, but it's interesting to me that people come from countries of poverty and have very little to learn with, and like as far as tools and stuff, and then they come here, and we struggle sometimes to feel like we can even teach them at all, because we don't have exactly what we need as a teacher, or I don't know. I'm getting off tangent again, but anyway, so in Indonesia, I just learned to love the people, be accepted by them. They gave me sometimes their last little chicken wing, a little scrawny chicken, or to make sure that my little fat American self, sorry, I'm just speaking for myself, but was fed, and that that I was made comfortable. The whole toilet situation that's a whole nother conversation, but they don't have Western toilets and things, and so they literally built like one and put it was like a maroon throne for me. Just the extent that they did to try to make me feel welcome was just amazing. But I was in the wilderness, like that. Well, I can't really. Where is my house? Like my little, I don't know, just in the woods and in the wilderness, and they were loving it, and life was great. But they wanted more. And then sometimes when our clients come here, I'm like, do you really want more? Because sometimes less is more. Think about that. So I started working with the refugees here. When I came here, the Indonesian people weren't refugees and aren't typically classified as that. But, as far as poorer people, sometimes in the areas where I was coming from, and trying to be a part of their community and help them to do the projects and things that we were there for. It was a really great experience to actually sleep literally on the ground. Woke up one day with pigs snorting in my ears and stuff. That experience, it didn't only change me, but I was already changed, transformed, in love with Christ because of some other things that maybe one day I'll share in my life. But this was just adding to my experience. It was just more tools in my toolbox, as one of my really great friends that I need to go see says, add more tools in your toolbox. I love that. So I came back to America, and I really kind of felt sorry for Americans. It was a forgive them for they don't understand, because I saw some of the people who were missionaries and things like that I worked with. They were angry at Americans because they would come back and see that we had everything, that we seemed to be ungrateful and seemed to just kind of hoard things and not care and not be sensitive to poverty or sharing the gospel, and to an extent of, will we lose it all? So I think that I was kind of sad for even the people that were, sorry, my hair's a mess. I think that I was sad even for the people that were missionaries, because I felt bad that they were almost angry at America or something. And so I felt like, they don't understand. They can't understand. They haven't been outside of this. I didn't understand. And so how can we expect them to just immediately get it? Because it sometimes takes time for us to get to a place where we can actually see it, and we have to get outside of ourselves to be able to really witness and see a bigger picture of everything. So I started going back to the resettlement agency and just volunteering, and more my heart got even more tangled with a lot of the newcomers and wanting to know more about where they came from and more about the situation and the gaps that I was seeing in the resettlement system, and how I could be a part of it and help, because part of my heart was torn because I wanted to be there in Indonesia on the ground with some of the children, especially I like teenagers, 14 and up to college age. I'm real sensitive to those girls and the kids in that age. I see their life starting, and that was one of the hardest parts of my life. So for some reason, I'm real sensitive to that age. I also like little 5-year-olds and 4-year-olds. They're so sweet and funny, and they're so gullible or whatever. They're so naive, and you can tell them, literally, there was a gray pig running across your bed this morning. I saw them, and they would believe it. It's just so funny. They're so cute. So I like those two ages, and I just missed them, and I was thinking about them, and I wanted to be there, but God brought me to America. I mean, I was born here, and I have children here, and they were still in school, and I was so torn, and I felt like, I can't just leave my own kids. That's not right. But I thought, God put me here for a reason. Now I'm not saying that somebody can't go overseas and serve, because I think that God does call us overseas and serve sometimes. But what happened to me was I had to realize that I had a purpose right here in America. and it can affect, what I do here can affect the whole world, and it could go back to Indonesia, and it can go back to other countries, the actual things that I do here. So what can I do in America that will affect the people in other countries in a positive way? I started realizing that when I would touch the lives of refugees here, that the things that they would learn, the heart that they would have, the things that would happen to them, they could then share it with their family, and then the love that I would pour into them would go back to their family. The blessings that we can pour into them, they will share with their family, and then hopefully you can reach a lot of people for Jesus, and you can reach a lot of people to have hope and to have you know, a life that is exciting to, you know, an exciting future to walk with the Holy Spirit. And so I was excited about that and how I could help if God would have let me be a part of that. And I just saw a bigger thing happening here. So I started literally just seeing what God would do. And I met a girl, and she was in a situation where she wasn't able to come to the English classes I was volunteering in. And so one of the case managers, I hope you can hear me, there's a plane going over. I always have planes going over at all hours, and it never makes a lot of sense to me because sometimes it's a lot of planes, usually 3 o'clock, but in the morning, I mean, like early in the morning. I'm not sure what that's all about. Interesting. So, yeah, I started working with Asha. The case manager asked me to go and check on one of the young girls that had 2 other little girls, and that I should check on her because she wasn't able to make it to the English classes. So when I went to her community, I knocked on the door and found a Somalian young girl. She was 20 years old, and she couldn't speak English, and she was crawling on the ground with neon flip-flops in her hands. And I was like, why is she crawling on the ground? I knew she had some sort of a disability, but I didn't understand what it was. She had a long skirt, and then she had a hijab, that's a headpiece, over her head. She's a beautiful young lady, and she said hello. And that was my welcome to Asha. She welcomed me into her home. She offered me juice to drink and a little cake. Everything was down low on low cabinets on the ground, under the cabinet. And she did the best that she could to welcome me. And we started talking, and we couldn't even speak the same language. I would point to my ring and I would say, married? And she would say, no. And so I learned a lot about her. She has 2 little girls that I'll tell you about. Maybe on another video, I'll tell you a little bit more about it. I don't know if I have time today to tell you all about Asha, but she was really in a situation where she was unable to get to the social services and help that she needed. And if she couldn't have transportation there, she didn't really do the hours of English and things that are required by the welfare agency and stuff to have that help that she needs. I know that touched a nerve, welfare agency. Yes, initially when people first come here, there's some services. It's actually not welfare initially, it's the resettlement agency's services, but they can get help for just only like 3 months, okay? So don't freak out. Let me tell you more about that in another part of our immigration discussion, because I want you to understand that, because the goal is not for them to stay on it, and they usually don't, okay? But we have brought them here, so they have rights, and so we can't not feed them. So how do we handle that? So for a period of time, we have to figure out ways to make sure that the people are fed, and I think that that's a godly thing to do. So just brace yourself, okay? I'm just thinking in my mind somebody's panicking about that welfare statement, so I apologize if you are. Hang in there with me, okay? All right, so Asha escaped the Somalian civil war to go to Ethiopia, and when she did, she was 10 years old. She was with her brother, who was 7 years old, and he was going to help her. They had 2 little kids. They were not their kids, they were their nieces. The 2 nieces lost their mother while their mother gave birth in Africa, which is a common thing in Africa because the medical system and medical care is not readily available for people who don't have the money or cannot get to the medical services. So a lot of times in Africa, these sweet moms die, and that's really sad. And actually it makes me really sad because today I'm actually all day today and yesterday, and I got to go back up tonight early in the morning probably. I've got a mom that's having a baby, and she's had previous babies with a midwife, and now she's in an American hospital literally panicking at all these machines and everything that are happening. She doesn't know everything that's happening to her. I'm trading off back and forth with one of my translators, and she's doing a great job, and this mother's doing a fabulous job, but it is just exhausting. She's been in there already a day and a half, and so we're just praying for her. Pray for her. So yeah, it's just so different, and I can't imagine her not having somebody like Asha's, like me, like our staff and volunteers and the people praying for her and just encouraging her, because this has got to be so new. Different sounds, machines, lights, the language, what's happening to my body, all this stuff is so different. So yeah, this is the kind of stuff that we do, and we need more volunteers. So back on Asha, she escaped the civil war in Somalia, and on her flight at 10 years old with these 2 babies, because she was caring for them now, because she's now the mom, she was on a big truck with several other people probably fleeing, and her and her brother and the babies and everybody flew out of the truck when the truck got in an accident. The truck flipped over. Asha was pinned underneath this thing, and she was pinned under there for several hours. A lot of the displaced people went around the truck and finally picked it up off of her, and her legs were damaged. So for several years she crawled around on the ground, tying probably a baby to the front, an infant baby to the back, and she survived. She survived 7 to 10 years there in an Ethiopian refugee camp. She applied for refugee status. She got it after a long time waiting, average 10 years. It was about 10 years for Asha. She was able to come to America and start her life over, and she thought maybe one day she would walk again and that her legs would be repaired. But when she came to America, and when I met her and went through the neurologist and stuff, we found out that the atrophy had set in and she was not going to be able to walk again, barring a miracle of God, and we still pray for that for her, and I believe that one day maybe it could happen. But for now, she is in a wheelchair. She's so strong. She has an electric wheelchair. She's very independent. She's a very smart young girl. She's learning the language. It's been several years now. She's actually in Nashville now, and she's doing super good. I'm so proud of her and her girls. The girls have graduated. When I met them, they were, let's see, girls were 10 years old, 9 and 10. Asha was 20, and her brother was 19. He's driving a freight truck, goes across 3 different states, and has a job of his own and a family of his own, and Asha helps to babysit. The girls have graduated school almost 2 years now, I guess, 2 years. They have scholarships, and they have done very well. They earned those. They worked hard to do that. They've all been working. She's been working and serving. They volunteer at one of the girls works at a homeless shelter, and she loves it. She says one day she wants to serve with us and do the kinds of things that I do, and she's such an inspiration, just like her mom, Aunt Asha. So she's doing very well. We're so proud of them. But Asha is one of the stories that inspired us to start Asha's Refuge, because in her situation there was a major gap for people who had disabilities. How was she supposed to actually drive and learn that and learn the language and get the kids to school and get a job and figure out the American disability, and how can she work, and she can, and she is, and she's doing well, and she's a positive story. Her brother is a hard worker. They're Muslim, by the way, and they love us. They love America. They thank for. They're now citizens. Okay, they're great people. Yes, I want them to know Christ. Of course I do. That's my hope. That's my prayer. And I pray for that every day. But if she never chooses him, then I'm still going to love her. I love her no matter what. And I know that she loves me no matter what. So I need to close. It's 28 minutes, and these things at 30 minutes are really hard to download. So I have shared with you the story of Asha. That's how we got started. And hopefully I can occasionally tell you how she's doing. But she's doing great. She's learning to drive. She's studying math and more English. I can have a conversation with her now on the telephone. I hate that she moved to Nashville, but I love her to pieces and proud of her for being independent. So I just wanted you to know that that's how we got started. Thank you for listening in. This is Jamie Jones. Please know that Jesus loves you. He loves you. He loves you. He loves you. Checking out. Bye.